So this has been at least a few weeks in the making, but I feel like we've been floating this for a while. Cardboard Consultants is what we went with, and we're gonna roll with this one. I was thinking about it up until like just before we started recording, and I'm like, you know what? Like when you wait to order at a restaurant and you're kind of between two foods, and then you're just like, I'm just gonna panic and order when they say it. It's kind of what I felt about Cardboard Consultants. That was T's idea, and I like it. So we're gonna be talking about a lot of things in the sports card and collectible space. But first, I want to introduce you guys. For those who might not know, I'm Aram, co-founder of justbaseball.com, and we're going to be doing this every week, talking sports cards, specifically baseball most of the time. Let's start with T, who's at the bottom of the screen. T, a little bit about you, what you do, and what people can expect.
Yeah, so I help write on the collectibles side of things for Just Baseball. I also co-own Wild Cards Trading Company, which is a sports cards trading company that actually Kendall and I have been working together on for quite some time. So we specialize in box breaks and razzes, and we sell cards, buy cards, trade cards, whatever. So we've been doing that for a little while now. So really, really excited about this. I think that this will be a great outlet for us to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the card world, some of the stuff that's coming up. And so I think we're gonna find that we can really discuss a lot of good stuff in the show. I'm really excited about it. So
Absolutely, man. And I think it really coincides with what we're doing at Just Baseball, because I'm always doing prospect stuff, always writing up systems, doing prospect analysis. And naturally, it coincides with the card game, especially with the prospecting nature of the hobby, specifically with baseball. And Kendall, we talk about it all the time. You text me questions on prospects, and it's almost natural to do this. But a little bit about yourself, Kendall, and then we'll jump into the show, because we got a lot of fun topics to go through in this episode.
Yeah, my name's Kendall McKee. I co-own Wildcards Trading with T, and I'm a writer here at Just Baseball. I also work on the merch department here, setting up all the sweet looks you guys got. Speaking of, I just got a delivery today, by the way. Ooh. So the not gambling advice tees are in my hands. So I don't know if we want to give a teaser at some point.
But we definitely got to close it out with those. And right. That's going to be a big hit. I know Peter's going to be pumped about those. And, the merch I'm excited about. It's getting cold here in New York. It's getting cold everywhere. And we got hoodies coming in too. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Hell yeah. I'm very excited about that. But let's get into a lot of these topics that we want to get into, and a little bit about what people can expect from this show before we jump into it. We really just want to be a combination of what you should be looking for in the industry and in the hobby in general. I think you guys do a really good job of that, because you talk about the Wild Cards company that you guys have, and you're very in touch with all of the intricacies in the hobby and everything that's going on. On my side, I'm nerding out on players 24/7. And a lot of the time there's a correlation between prospect performance and card value, but there's a lot of things in between. And I think marrying both of our backgrounds here is going to result in a lot of good advice, I think, and a lot of good discourse on the hobby. And we're going to be talking about where we're putting our money too, and what cards we're investing in. And I'm excited to start talking about what you guys are pulling as well. And that's something that we're going to talk about in the end of the segment too, is every time you guys do a break, which we'll put the link in the description if you want to get in on the next card break. They will be doing it quite often, and we'll be doing some on YouTube in the future here as well. But we got to talk World Series, because that's obviously where you have some of the biggest, I guess it would be just the biggest stage for a lot of players. And we know that there's always been a correlation with big stage and price going up on cards. Is it always sustainable? Maybe not. But I do think it sometimes is the beginning of people realizing, hey, this guy's for real. I don't know if that quite happened this year, but there was a level of getting to the World Series for the Braves. And let's start with them, where Austin Riley played a big part in that. And Riley was a highly touted prospect. So his card, it wasn't like somebody that came out of nowhere like Randy Arozarena, or even like an Adolis Garcia, who had the prospect cards, but kind of faded because he was 27 and still in AAA. This is a guy that was a top 100 guy, but struggled in the beginning in the big leagues and then really hit his stride this year and was just spectacular, helped them win the World Series, and is a big part of what they're doing. If I'm somebody that maybe didn't invest in Austin Riley and now I still believe he's going to be really good, is it too late for me to hop in and try to invest in this guy now? How do I know if it's an okay time to still buy? And I'm curious what you think about that, T. And if you have any thoughts on that, like, when is it too late? Is it ever too late? And how do you kind of correlate that to, if I still think he's going to keep rolling, how do I know if it's at the right price point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So did a little digging, obviously, on Riley. And first of all, like, when we talk about a player's cards, we're going to always talk about his Bowman Chrome first auto, typically a PSA 10. Like, when we talk about like
when
price
available
points and stuff like that, that's the card that we're looking at. That's going to be the benchmark, right? So you guys can take that to the bank. Anytime we're talking about numbers, that's going to be the card we're looking at. We're not going to look at any color with that or a refractor or anything like that. Just his standard Bowman Chrome first auto PSA 10. So anyway, with that being said, like, had you bought Austin Riley at the beginning of the year, you could have bought that card for around $125. Right now, there's been a handful of sales recently, but you're looking at probably $350 to $400 for that similar card. There was an outlier a couple days ago around $550. So still probably around that $400 mark that you can get in on Austin Riley right now. The question that I think Aram's asking is that a good price point at which to jump in still? And that really depends on, I think, on if we think that his performance this year is sustainable, right? So he had a fantastic year when you look at his numbers. He led all third basemen in WRAA, WOBA, WRC plus. His BABIP was up considerably.
Oh man, he is so in it.
My guy's in Fangraphs now.
I'm telling you, like, this is the truth. This is where we look to find out if these guys are performing at a level that we think that they're at. So his K rate was up a little bit, but way down compared to his first year. In 2019, he was at 36%. Now he's around 25%. So the guy just had a phenomenal year. I personally think that what we're seeing out of Austin Riley is likely to continue. I would love to hear your guys' standpoint. So, but if it does, we're looking at a price point of $350 on a guy that is going to be a perennial, all-star for a long time. And I think that's a pretty good price point to get in on. And I'm not afraid to pull the trigger right now. Love to hear your guys' thoughts. So,
yeah. So Kendall, let's say we all think he's a perennial all-star, unless you feel a little bit different. What is the value of a perennial all-star, right? I know that there's not like, perennial all-star, $500, but it depends on market. At the end of the day, it's supply and demand. The Braves are a pretty big market. They just won the World Series. Obviously, it'll probably let off a little bit of steam just because they're riding high right now and people are excited. But how do I know if $350 is a fair price for a perennial all-star? First, I guess you can share your thoughts if you think he can continue to be a perennial star. And second, would that mean that there's still room to run in terms of price?
Yeah, I do think Austin Riley is who he is. I think we've seen a guy that's repeatable. I think he could come back and repeat that performance over and over. The bad part here is I think this is specific in the hobby. This is specific to baseball in general, but I think it's where you're going to make your money is not in the major leaguers. Mm-hmm. And so although he might be a good hold right now, if you already have the cards, I wouldn't say he's a good buy right now because there's so many players in the MLB and there's so many players that are relevant in the minor leagues. It's unlike the other sports when you're in terms of the hobby. And so for me, this is just a personal philosophy that I realized recently that I do this. I've been doing it for a long time, but I kind of put words to it recently that I invest in either prospects or GOATs. Like it's either like they're prospects where you're going to get a high volume or a high rise and a peak at some point to try to make some money in a return, or somebody that's going to go up over the long haul. And for instance, I wrote an article a couple of months ago by saying these major leaguers are fine, but this major leaguer can't hurt himself at this point. It was Sandy Koufax. He's not going to go out there and tear an ACL. He's got the perennial value at this point, unless some news comes out that he's, John Gruden. But yeah. But that's what I think. So personally, I'm not buying Austin Riley. There's other players that I would spend $500 on before him, many other players. So not that he's not going to be great. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying his card values, the X potential there is not there for me.
And I agree with that take for the most part, because when you're looking at the value of a player, you're also trying to see how much room there is to run. And that's kind of what I was using, last time is a point where we were actually doing hot takes in the Just Baseball show today. And one of the hot takes was that Austin Riley would be an MVP. I believe that was Peter that gave that hot take next year. If that were to happen, then you get some room to run. We had to give hot takes, and that was the hot one. Obviously, that's unlikely, but it's not crazy. I mean, he's going to even get some probably MVP votes at the end of this year and rank somewhere in the top 10, maybe even the top 6 or 7 with the World Series as well. He might even, finish in the top 5. If that happens, then you're seeing some value, but you're betting on a razor thin probability there. And he's still a guy with some swing and miss concerns. So I like that as an example, because you could spread out $500 and give yourself much more room to potentially make money, and also hedge a little bit with some safer prospects with that money. And I think that's something that we'll talk a lot about, obviously, with the prospect background that I have, with the investment that you guys like to do with players, and kind of bring that together. We're going to update the top 100 list for justbaseball.com very soon. And that's something that, we're always talking about. And there's a lot of differences with the types of prospects that you invest in too. And I think that there is a lot of value in guys with the hit tool. And I think that's obviously safer, but if you want to bet on guys that are toolsy, that can potentially explode, those guys are interesting too. But I always found it crazy to see like the Joe Adele cost compared to like an Alec Thomas, because Alec Thomas could end up being a really, really good baseball player, but Joe Adele is exponentially more expensive and way riskier. And I always thought that was interesting, because I think you can juggle a little bit of that upside and have a little bit of risk without paying a premium for a guy like Joe Adele. And we're going to get into prospects a little bit too, but I want to wrap up on the World Series side of things with another player with a ton of upside, who I still think is a little bit better of an investment than maybe an Austin Riley, just because I think he's got MVP upside, and that's Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is somebody that I think is safe as well. Not that Riley isn't safe. Tucker's as safe as it gets. When it comes to just low K rate, high production, he's in the tier 1 and that kind of range. I believe if it was, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I had it in front of me. Players with a strikeout rate under 17% and a slugging percentage at a certain clip, I picked that stat out, and he was in company with only Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Juan Soto in that regard of low K rate, high slugging. So
I believe Franco is in that top 10 as well.
Exactly. That's a really special group. So with Kyle Tucker here, obviously he's expensive too. And I know T has some of the price points recently on him. T, what do you think about Tucker? I know we're saying invest in prospects, but like for me, I think Tucker is going to be a perennial all-star and a top 10 player for the next decade. That's how strong I feel on him. Should I still buy if I feel that strongly?
Yeah, I agree. Here's some interesting stats. You picked out K rate and what was it, slugging percentage. Okay, so this is what he had this year. His walk rate this year was around 9%, K rate 15%. His ISO was around 263. Now, the total number of guys who've had similar seasons in the past 10 years with those numbers is only 26 guys. You're talking about Braun, Fielder, Miggy, Ortiz, Batista, Arenado, Betts, those types of guys. When you take into account his 294 average, that list shrinks to 16. So you're talking about 16 guys that have had a comparable offensive season to what Kyle Tucker just did. Right now, his Bowman Chrome first autos in that $400 to $500 range. I got a PSA 9 that I bought into that was actually a refractor. So it numbered out of $499 for only like 50 something bucks, which I was super excited about. But yeah, I think that he's a buy. I know that that's kind of crazy. But given like what we just saw out of him, I'm thinking this guy is going to be just a phenom over the next 10 years. 24 years old, so fairly young guy. But I like where he's at. This past year, I love the clip comparing his swing to Ted Williams. I don't know if you guys saw that or not.
Yeah.
But just really, really hyped on Kyle Tucker right now. And I'm not afraid to pull the trigger on him at that price point.
Yeah. So let me retake my first take that I've ever made on this on this podcast or whatever this is. I said, I don't invest in major leaguers. I don't invest in all major leaguers. I think Kyle Tucker is an absolute buy right now, because here's why. This, of course, he's like those of us that know baseball really well. I think there's only a small portion of the hobby that knows baseball really well. And I know that's probably going to get some backlash, but people look at the Astros and they think Correa, they think Altuve, they think Jordan, they think Bregman. No one thinks Kyle Tucker. So with that being said, that's going to draw his value down until he's just where people aren't going to be able to avoid him. And so I think we're not even close to Kyle Tucker's ceiling value wise yet. I think when you do look at the Ted Williams, when you do look at the stats, when you do look at how much of a gamer he is, and side note here, like I first remember looking at Kyle Tucker when Preston Tucker was on the Astros, and how he went over to Korea, which is how I found out about him, because you guys know I love Korean baseball. But anyway, long story short, I think Kyle Tucker has a lot of room to grow here. So it's just kind of one of those situations where there's some people that just don't get the media attention they deserve. And I think Kyle Tucker is one of those. And once he does get the media attention, his value will skyrocket.
And I think you bring up a good point is he is going to get that attention because Correa's out. Now, Altuve, he's going to be good for a while still, but that's one guy that's playing second base. I think their dynamic player is going to be Kyle Tucker out there. And a really important thing for me when I'm investing in players is kind of what I teased earlier, is that obviously this is a game that's rampant with strikeouts, and there's no way to fully avoid that. But when you have a guy that's hitting for power and also making the consistent contact with some of the marks that T pointed out, in terms of how rare it is to find guys that can produce at the level that he produced while also limiting the swing and miss, that's like Mookie Betts type stuff. And that's why it was interesting that he was put in that same boat, because it really is hard to find guys that make contact that frequently and also produce. Vlad Guerrero Jr., another example, and Juan Soto, another example. Those are guys that I feel very comfortable and very safe with. I'd liken that to a mutual fund. But this with Kyle Tucker here, I think is buying a mutual fund almost still low, which I think is a really unique situation. And that's why I'm with you 100%. I think he's a buy, and nothing against Austin Riley. I just think it's a little bit more volatile. And I think Tucker's ceiling is a little bit higher because I like his longevity. And also he's a great defender. He's going to make some of those, highlight reel plays. And it's all about exposure at the end of the day. And I think he's going to get a lot of that exposure as well. And he seems like a pretty funny personality too, which all of those things come into factor when you're talking about the value of a player. It's about the marketability as well. We're going to get into a little bit of Hall of Fame talk because I think that's always an interesting topic. We're also going to get into a little bit of prospect talk because you guys pulled a pretty crazy card. I believe one of the craziest cards you've pulled in terms of scarcity, maybe not name recognition, but scarcity for a wild cards break before. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit more prospects conversation. But real quick, I wanted to talk about the Hall of Fame because typically the Hall of Fame induction or like getting elected into the Hall of Fame doesn't have a huge impact on card values when people know that that guy's going to get into the Hall of Fame. But when people are not sure if they're going to get into the Hall of Fame, the value will fluctuate a little bit more. That makes sense, right? Like nobody was shocked when Derek Jeter got into the Hall of Fame. They already knew that. So the card value, maybe it bumps a little bit just because people are talking about it. It's a relevancy thing, but then it kind of normalizes again. Guys that are on the fence, it's risky. It's almost like betting on earnings with the stock market. But if there's a guy that's on the fence that you think gets into the Hall of Fame, seems like a pretty interesting investment. I think we're already seeing the speculators on the Hall of Fame. And something that stands out to me is a guy like David Ortiz that I know we mentioned and wanted to talk about here. His value seems to start going up. And I think if he gets in the Hall, 100%, his value is going to go up even more because he's a little bit of that murky guy, ties to PEDs, not quite the failed test and suspension, but ties to it. Is that going to hold him back? And is there enough doubt there about his Hall of Fame status to potentially see his value rise? I'll start with you on this one, Kendall. Obviously, we can't really predict how the Hall of Fame voting is going to go. I feel like this is kind of playing with fire.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame stuff, I try to stick away from it in the middle. You know, like if you get a player early and you think he's going to be there, for instance, like for me, I'd love to have more Adrian Beltre in my collection because I think he's going to be there. Or largely after, like what I said earlier. But with Ortiz, I think it's specifically, for him specifically, I think it's a lot different because of the Boston Strong stuff, because of what he's done with the city and with announcing and all that kind of stuff. I think his legacy is more than his baseball career, especially like, didn't he like survive getting assassinated or something?
Got shot.
Like,
he got shot.
Like who is this guy? Like Papi is much like when you say Big Papi, that's more than his stats. And I think he's more than a designated hitter, really. I think he's an ambassador for the sport, which should go a lot into his Hall of Fame consideration. Take the PEDs and all that kind of stuff into account. If you compare him to other guys on that list of the asterisk list, I think he's higher up for me. Like if I had a vote, Papi would be on my list. And I don't know if Barry would. So, I think Papi, his marketability is going to take him into that buy section for me.
I might be catching you off guard here because I think that's a good point, Kendall, but kind of spurred a thought in my mind.
Okay.
If I'm catching you off guard here, no worries, but how does Big Papi's price compare to some of the other alleged PED users? Off the top, do you have any idea? Because I think that's an important question, right? Like, is Big Papi already more expensive than the Barry Bonds? But that's also a different era of mass production. Yeah. It's a really interesting topic there. But like Roger Clemens, we're seeing his value still pretty solid when you're looking at a PSA 10 of his rookie card. Barry Bonds, I bought an entire collection right before the boom and a bunch of 1986 Topps traded boxes, and I pulled out the Bonds and I've got a lot of them. And I'm nervous that if once he falls off the ballot, it's going to drop. But there's still a level of a lot of people that look at Barry Bonds as the best hitter to ever do it. We're not going to get into that and be political on here. We're just talking baseball cards, but there's a large portion of people that believe that. So he kind of transcends the Hall of Fame a little bit too. David Ortiz obviously transcends the Hall of Fame. How does his price point, do you think, compare to some of the other alleged PED users that might be kind of kept out of the Hall of Fame?
Okay. In all honesty, I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. I think that's a fantastic question, and probably maybe one we could even lead with next week.
We'll lead that next episode. I didn't even think about that till just now, so we'll lead into that one next episode.
But I can talk to Papi's value, and so like when you talk about David Ortiz cards, you're talking about, well, he's got a lot of good ones, but the two primary ones are that 1997 Fleer where he's actually listed as David Arias, and that's like his rookie card. And then he has another 1997 card from the Donruss Signatures series where they actually have an autographed card, which was pretty rare back then. And so they actually created a card that was a red parallel that was out of 3,900. Then they created a green one, which I think was out of 1,000, and a blue one, which was out of 100, which was pretty cool and pretty forward thinking, actually. So there was like a collection of those, all PSA 10s that sold last week. I think the red was 800, and the green and the blue were both 950. So we're talking under $1,000 for a guy that's 10th all time in home runs, maybe like top 20 all time in RBIs when you're talking about Hall of Fame guys.
He might get a statue outside of Fenway when it's all said and done.
I mean,
why wouldn't he?
He's a monster figure. You can get the raw version of those cards, the non-graded of those signature cards for around $400. I think I feel like I'm kind of sound like a broken record here because I'm saying it every time. I think Poppy under 1,000 is a buy. Like, I don't see why you wouldn't try to capitalize on that right now, considering where the potential of the value could be in 10 to 20 years. I know that's a long play, but I mean, I think it's a pretty smart one in my opinion. I think under $1,000 for a Poppy rookie card, auto rookie card, any numbered version of that is a fantastic play right now.
And what's a good baseline price for his just base rookie if I don't have that kind of money to spend on a David Ortiz?
Sure. I think the 1997 Fleer PSA was around, the PSA 10, was around $550.
So that's what's interesting to me, because I have Barry Bonds right in front of me here. 1986 tops traded PSA 10 between $385 and $400. So why? Why?
I think it's perception. Honestly, I don't like
it's likability, right? Like David Ortiz is still relevant in our faces. We see him on television every day. He's hilarious. He's a cool guy. Barry Bonds is not really well liked. It's the reality of it. I mean, and I think that's the psychology of it too, that I think is really important. People be like, well, Barry Bonds is better than David Ortiz, and they're both linked to PEDs. Yes. And I would say that, Barry Bonds' situation was a little bit worse. But regardless, yes, of course. But there's a level of people wanting to collect David Ortiz and some people that just want nothing to do with Barry Bonds. And I think no matter how you feel about PEDs, people still respect Ortiz as a person. And that's not to slight Barry Bonds. It's just people really enjoy Ortiz. And there's a reason why Ortiz is on television and Bonds isn't. It's just what it is. And I think that's a really important thing to speak to also, is that there's a lot of psychology that goes into this. And that's why I'm always looking at fun, marketable players and guys that I think can also be exciting and entertaining in that regard as well. That's why, Fernando Tatis is as special as it gets, but he's also an icon. He's already an icon because he's that face of the new modern game of the, I don't care about your unwritten rules. It's what he represents too. Because there's players that I think are just as good as he is that might not be at that same price point. So there's definitely some psychology that goes into it. We're going to keep talking about the Hall of Fame as it goes on. And we're going to be talking about vintage cards too, because I've been a big vintage card collector my whole life. And I always find it interesting because every once in a while you'll see some random fluctuations. And I do think we'll have a whole episode when that Derek Jeter documentary comes out. I'm very interested to see what happens with his price, because we saw what happened with the Michael Jordan doc.
Oh, it'll boom.
That price went up. So that'll be a fun conversation as well. I want to wrap up with some prospect talk, because you guys at Wild Cards did a break the other day. And unfortunately, I did not buy the Phillies spot. And the Phillies spot cashed out if they want to cash out, or they could hold it. Maybe not the most known prospect in the world, but the way it is with prospects, you talk about how much room there is to run. That because of the speculation, if you can get a card that's, numbered out of 25, if the prospect, if there's even some semblance of ability to dream on them, there's going to be a decent value to it. And there's more than some semblance on Johan Rojas, who may not be familiar to many outside of Philadelphia, but is an interesting prospect. And, not a top 100 guy, but athletic, put up some good numbers towards the end of the year. And you guys pulled a Johan Rojas auto out of 25 in that break. That's pretty damn cool. Is that the best pull you guys have had?
Yeah, I think so. We've had something somewhat similar to it, but out of 25, the auto for Rojas, especially with what it's going for now, I think it's probably, I think it's our top pull. What do you think, Kendall?
Yeah, I think the only thing close to that was an on-campus Patrick Mahomes card we pulled one time that had a print line on it that was pretty bad. So which suffered in the value department. But I think in terms of just like sheer awesomeness, like an orange shimmer out of 25 Bowman first, like it does not get any cooler than that.
Yeah, it was an awesome card. And I looking back at the values right now, I think the last one sold for around 500. It's kind of hard to find comps. I think that the last orange shimmer went for 500. There's an orange sapphire that went for 525. They do say though, and this is maybe something just for FYI, like when you're talking about color variations in Bowman, typically shimmers will go for one tier below it. So that would be gold is out of 50, right, Kendall? I think that's correct.
Gold is out of 50.
So in the solid version, like there's a solid orange, there's a solid red, a solid gold. Those typically like will go for more than the shimmer or the sapphire version. So like the shimmer goes for one tier down. So a solid gold out of 50 is similar in price to the orange shimmer. Yeah, that's just an FYI if you guys are thinking about like.
And why is that? Is that just visible or visual appeal?
Yeah, it's just
what I really think it is
perception
is the shimmer came out later. And so classic collectors they like that bold color.
I do too, to be honest. I do. I mean, look, I'm not going to be upset with a shimmer. If I have an opportunity to buy a card of a player I like, I'm going to buy it. It's not going to deter me. But if it's one or the other at the same price point, I kind of like the solid one too. I do. I think there's just something more, still a little traditional about it. Like I pulled this, Ivan Johnson, and he's having a great, he's having a great year or a great little stretch in the Arizona Fall League right now. But like, I prefer the solid card, like I prefer like the solid Gabriel Arias looking card.
Yeah.
Which, that's just me too. So I think that's a good point. And usually you don't have to worry too much about those intricacies, but that is something that is worth noting. And a little bit on Rojas, because as people start to get used to this show, as we go week to week, I'm obviously going to have a lot on all of the prospects. And then, we're going to be bouncing off each other about what that means in the card hobby. Rojas has as much upside as any player, especially at least on the offensive side of things in that system. He has as much upside as anybody in that system. So because it's a lottery ticket, let's be real. And you could say all prospects are, but a lot of them are a lot safer. It's like a discounted lottery ticket. Yeah. This is a lottery ticket, but he's got all the tools you can imagine. I mean, I was watching him a little bit more after you guys pulled him. I wanted to have a little bit more information on him. I mean, if he puts it together approach-wise, the sky's the limit. He's a plus runner. He's got above average power potential. He's potentially a plus outfielder in center field. Like there's a lot to like here, but there's also some approach issues, and he's very, very aggressive, and that's a little concerning. So if you're somebody in that spot, are you holding it and hoping that, he continues to trend upward? But also the more he struggles, if he does, the less people can dream on him, and the more that price is going to go down. What's the best way to navigate that? Or is it, are you just kind of going case by case? And that's where we come in. And that's where I'm going to tell you what prospects I feel good about. But for a guy like this, I'll be honest, he's a lottery ticket.
Yeah. I think it is a case by case basis. And I think with this specific card, I would probably go ahead and, especially if I pulled it, if I pulled in a break, like, what are you, $40 into the card right now? I'd have it graded. Then I'd turn it. I'm going to flip it almost immediately. I'm interested to hear, like, you talked a little bit about him, and I guess this is where we would connect here, because I would want to know more about the guy. Like he started off in A ball this year, right? And then he kind of towards the end of the season, I think he was promoted to high A. Is that correct? You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But he looked like a completely different player, at least from a number standpoint. So I would come to you and say, is what we saw in that very tail end of the year, which was only about 20 games in high A, what we can expect or just an aberration?
That's the thing that makes it hard with these kids is, I'm watching what we see there, and I think something clicked for him. I definitely think something clicked for him because he earned that promotion through finishing really strong in low A. And, that's why I think there's a level of he could come out swinging next year. There's also a very distinct possibility that he could end up not being the same guy next year and hitting a wall. He could have just had a nice stretch. I liked what I saw. I went back and watched some ABs. I liked what I saw approach-wise. Seemed a lot more patient. Yeah, from high A and towards the tail end of low A, looked much more patient. Looked like he was a lot, I guess, like he had more of a plan at the plate. And that's really big because there was no 2020 season. And this kid, had only played at the lower rookie levels at that point. And it seemed like he settled in. So if you're really sold on that, and for me, like I see that, I'm probably holding until the beginning of next season and seeing how it looks. Because if I see a couple of weeks there and I don't love what I see, I have enough confidence in how I feel and perceive it that I'll sell. If he turns it around, he turns it around. But after what he did there, I think he earned himself the first few weeks or a month of next season because the jump from low A to high A, I think high A to double A is a really, really big jump, especially last year because there was so much talent in double A after no 2020 season. But low A to high A for a guy who didn't have that many at-bats under his belt is a big jump. And he finished strong in low A and kept it rolling in high A. I think he earns himself the benefit of the doubt there. 5 home runs over those 31 games between the two levels down the stretch, walked 14 times, only 21 Ks. And he stole bags in high A too, where they started to normalize the rules a little bit on stolen bases. So I like having a few of those guys in my portfolio because you give yourself a little bit of chance to run. I don't think I'm putting a ton of money into this guy. But at the same time, here's my thing. I've got a bunch of other prospects that I'm really confident on that we're going to talk about in next week's episode that I could use that money to go invest in. And I think that's where you ultimately talk yourself into maybe cutting ties and spending that money where you feel more confident instead of a guy that you kind of lucked into. But do you almost feel like there's like a pull to the guy that you pull that you want to hold on to him a little bit more? Or
see, I'm exactly the opposite of that.
A little bit of the opposite.
Yeah. So I'm exactly the opposite where if I pull a stud like this, which to be frank, I've never pulled this card. So, I can't say that I'd be in this situation with this exact player. But for me, like I'm looking at the PSA 9 is like 1,300 or something like that. Like I'm trying to get that graded and get it out so I can put 1,300 into J-Rod or, something like that. Like I have a portfolio of guys that I love and I have some fringe guys. But honestly, like I don't have just bukus of prospects. I typically have like 5 to 10 that I'm invested pretty heavily in. So for me, it's a sell and reallocate.
Here's an interesting question. So you got $500. You sell, you pull a Rojas, you sell them for $500 for that same price point around there. These are like the PSA 10 Bowman Chrome First autos you could get. Corey Seager, Jonathan India, Jordan Alvarez, Brian Hayes. We already talked about Kyle Tucker, Austin Riley is another one. I mean, Pete Alonso, Ryan Mountcastle. Like, what are you doing? Are you investing in one of those guys or are you fine rolling the dice with Rojas?
So what do you think?
I'm reinvesting.
Yeah, I agree. Off the top of your head though, like rough estimate, what does it out of 25 go for some of those guys?
Ooh, a lot.
Stupid money for India specifically would be stupid money, right?
But the odds of Rojas becoming that guy,
yeah,
very, very thin.
I mean, the guy's not even on our top 100.
No. I mean, I'm going to give him a look. I gave him a look. He's going to be in the Phillies top 10 when I release that. Not a system I'm that excited to write about, to be honest. We just put out the Tigers top 10 and I can't wait for our next episode too, because there's so many prospects I love whose cards don't exist yet. And I'm like just dying for some of these guys to get put into sets because there's some prospects I really, really like. But I want to wrap up. We're going to talk about.
Speaking of Tigers, can I ask you one question?
Yeah, of course.
What do you think about Adenzo Reyes?
Not strong enough to invest money in it. And
okay.
that's, you know, I think he's interesting, but there's probably 10 or 12 other guys that I'd rather put money into there that don't have cards. Why don't they have cards? Why does Reyes?
Yeah, I mean, this
is
his second year in a Bowman product. Like, why do you do that? There's so many guys that don't have cards. Give them a first.
He doesn't excite me, really, to be honest. He's a guy that I think is you know, not going to even crack enough attention to really go up in value in the minors. One more guy in the minors, and then I want to wrap up with just a little bit of general prospect talk before we close out this episode. Andy Pages, as Jack McMullen would say, who's you know, was the play-by-play broadcaster. He's a play-by-play broadcaster of the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. So when they played Andy Pages, I believe they were told to say Andy Pages, which, you know, it's the G's and H. But I'm just so used to Pages. I know I'm going to keep going back and forth, so I'm going to call him Andy Pages in this one. He is a Dodger. And Dodgers go for a lot because it's LA and they have a track record of developing prospects. I'm super high on him. You know, we have him up there at number 62 on our top 100. He's really exciting. He's volatile, though. There's some swing and miss. He's young, but he's toolsy, hit a ton of jacks, and his card's already going for a decent amount. As a guy that's in a lower level, but still has some room to run, I'll give my prospect analysis on him. But where do you kind of stack his price point up with some other prospects? I'll start with you, T. Where is he already pricing in terms of prospects like value? Because we're going to start contextualizing things with like, this is what a top 25 prospect should go for generally. This is what a top 50 prospect should go for generally. Where is he priced at right now?
Yeah, so you can get a Pages, I'm sorry, excuse me, for about $250. And that price has increased over roughly around 90% over the last 6 months. So even if you had bought it, you know, in May, you would be looking at 100, doing basically 2x on it already. So the guy had a phenomenal year. I think he hit 31 home runs. I mean, he was just an absolute stud. So the question though, to me is kind of like, where would, like, I'm not really sure if that price point is something that I'm ready to buy in at. I don't know. My camera kind of went fuzzy. I'm sorry.
No.
But $250 to me on a guy like that, who really, when we're looking at kind of his data, doesn't have more than a full year, maybe a year and a half under his belt, even though he kind of came on the scene in 2018. I like him, but I just feel like it's too high. I feel like it's too high.
I'm with you, because I look at, you know, some of the other prospects that are, I think, similar profile to him, and it seems a bit hard to justify that cost. You say he's at about what, 250 is where he's at. You could probably get a Brennan Davis Bowman Chrome Auto PSA 10 at around 350. And I could probably come up with some more investments that are closer to the 250 range at that point. But I'm looking at some that are sold for 350, 375 for Brennan Davis. I think it'll drop a little bit in the off season as well. Like, that's a similar profile of prospect, toolsy, big market, exciting guy, big power, except Brennan did it in AA and in AAA. Right. So we don't know how Andy Pages is going to do in AA. I think he might struggle a little bit. He's young. He's going to feel it out, but you know, you're going to have to ride a little bit of a roller coaster there. I would rather, you know, invest in someone with some room to run. And that's why it's tough with the Dodgers prospects and those guys. I think you really got to get it on the ground floor, because I'm a big fan of him as a prospect. I really am. But when you look at the price point there, he's about priced at, I would say, and I'm high on him compared to a lot of other prospect rankings, he's still priced at about higher than where I have him ranked in our top 100 relative to the values. And we're going to continue to provide value and contextualize that more as we go on. I just think it's a little bit too pricey now, even though I really like him as a prospect. So for example, if I pulled him, I'd probably hold it because I like him as a prospect, but I don't think I'm buying, if that makes sense. And there's not that many players I would say that about. If I pull him, I'm holding, but I'm not buying, but that he's just one of those guys.
I think for me, his K percentage is too high.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at So I did a little comparison before we started this podcast between him and Johan. Like they're both in high A. They're both, relatively close to the same age, and Johan's numbers are better. And it's like, okay, well, so which one do you have higher? Like how are you going to spend the Dodger money here or the Phillies money? Of course, your Phillies prospect is not going to be near as hyped as the Dodger prospect. But when you look at, like, for instance, the 2021 Bowman Chromes just came out, and you've got firsts in that product that are coming out for mostly international prospects for the first time. Luis Rodriguez, Dodger, going for considerably more money than any other player that has a first in there. Like he's pulling autos for $200-300 raw, and the guy is like 17, I think. So it's like Dodgers are crazy. But here's an interesting thing. Who do you like more, Aram? Would you rather have right now as an investment at the current level that they're at? Would you rather have Pages or Vogel?
Or Vogel? I'd go with Pages, just because
even at the valuation of where they're at.
How much cheaper is Vogel?
That kind of is one of those things that just popped up. I would imagine it's considerable.
If it's considerable, I still would go with Pages, because I feel like the K rate is somewhat concerning, but he's also so young. And to do what he did power-wise, like he's not a guy that I'm actively trying to buy. But Vogel, I'm worried about his ability to flat out hit. Like I just don't even know if he can hit enough. When we look at what Pages did, he walks 15% of the time to offset those Ks. I always say no K rate is the same. If I see a guy that's hitting for power, walking and K'ing at a 25% clip, I'm not overly concerned about it. I like his swing. I think he started to really feel it out and repeat it better down the stretch. He has a lot going for him. Vogel is a freak athlete, but I am worried about the bat there. Like this guy had 31 home runs in 120 games. It's risky, but I'd probably side with him just because that power is different. And he's still only 20.
Yeah. I mean, he's got that big frame, that Cuban guy that we were all remember when Yasiel Puig came up, and it was just like, oh, this guy is just different. And I think that you have the tendency to look at Pages and say, oh, is he another one of those? Is he another one of that kind of gifting of a player, where he's just built like a Mack truck and is going to hit balls a quarter mile,
And I think that hype is kind of building it up. And that's why I love him as a prospect. I really do. But I think that visualization of what people can see him becoming is almost leading. It's getting too far ahead of him actually becoming that. And I think that's going to be a little bit difficult for him, because it's almost like you're pitting him against himself. And I think that's something, even if he has an okay year next year, his value is going to tank because people are already putting these crazy expectations on him.
And prospect fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another guy that I think, and that's a big term we'll use. I think he could be a victim of prospect fatigue after this was really his first full season and his first season above rookie ball. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues to trend. A couple guys I wanted to wrap up with real quick prospect wise, that I just wanted to say, I think at the end we can kind of talk about always who we're buying up. And somebody that I am looking to buy up throughout this offseason is Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll, we talk about safe prospects. I love Corbin Carroll's high floor, bat to ball skills, 70 grade runner, sneaky power. He missed the whole season essentially because of a messed up shoulder on a swing. He's going to come back. He's going to be good. I really like what I saw from him. Even in the first few games, he was showing way more power than people expected. He's going to hit so many triples in Arizona. It's going to be crazy. David Peralta led the league in triples out there. That's how built it is for triples. The other guy, Gabriel Moreno, I know we've talked about him. I invested in him before the season. He got hurt too. He's back in the Arizona Fall League. He looks great. Those are two prospects I'm looking to buy. Who are you looking at, T? And then we'll wrap up with Kendall.
I bought Moreno too. And so that's one of the guys that
talk about a hit tool, by the way, too. And now he's showing the power.
Yeah.
It's just too easy.
Yeah. So I bought Moreno as well. Of course, one of the guys that I would love to own, but again, I think he's similar to Pages, but even more so would be Riley Green. Obviously, is a guy that anybody would be looking to buy, but my gosh, it's just his card prices are already just so stinking high. And I think this is where, and we've kind of already hit on this at all, but I think that there's just some real inefficiencies in the market around prospects right now. And I just don't, I get that when you have scarcity and you have hype and all that stuff, it can create that. But man, after looking at guys like Tucker and Riley that we've already looked at, and just other guys like I mentioned that are around that same price point, outside of surefire guys that I could just find, like if I just stumble across somebody that has them really underpriced, I'm not buying a ton of the big name guys right now. To me, I think their escalation's already baked into their card price. It's kind of scary. So, but I did like Moreno. I got him at a fairly discounted price, thanks to you guys and your take on him. So for me, it's just about kind of scouring Rocchio. Bray and Rocchio is another guy. I know you're familiar with him. Is relatively, he's not priced way outside of the market yet. So he's another guy that I'm interested in. I think he's in our top 100, maybe around the 50 something mark. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Maybe 70th. I
think he's right in the 70 range, but somebody 70. That I'm watching with a ton of helium as he continues. And real quick before we get to Kendall too, and before you wrap up, because there's something that just popped in my mind. You talk about the price already being baked in a little bit. That's a really good point, because I look at a Kyle Tucker, and you could go get his Bowman Chrome Auto PSA 10 right now for about $400.
Mm-hmm.
I could sell, my Brendan Davis's, who I invested in heavily before the season, for about $400. What are the odds that Brendan Davis, who I'm very high on, ends up better than Kyle Tucker? Like, if we're talking about price comparison here, and I know the market matters, but once you get to a certain level of stud, it doesn't matter where you play. Yeah. I just think that is crazy to me. And I love Brendan Davis, but I mean, like, Kyle Tucker's doing it at the big league level for a World Series runner-up, and former champion, and he's still 24. It's not like he's 28.
It's the same thing with Riley. I mean, you look at Riley Green. His cards are ridiculously priced right now. And I went back and looked at, I think a decent comp for him. It might be Yelich. And Yelich is a stud. He's had a fantastic career, and you can buy Yelich cards, rookie cards, PSA 10 rookie cards, for cheaper than you can buy some of these Riley Green. Not obviously, we're looking at different types of cards, but when you look at comparable cards, Riley's cards are just as expensive. And I can't do it on some of these guys. It's just, there's too much hype. The market is not, it's just not right now. And I think it'll calm down over the next few months. I think we're still reeling from a March of this year that just saw an insane bump across the board. I think we're still coming down from that. Go look at market movers prices on just about anything, and you look at March, and it's like it goes up like 10x. So we're still kind of reeling from that. But yeah, along that lines, some of these prospects have all of their potential baked into their prices right now, and it's scary. And
that's what we're going to be able to do here, is that we're going to help identify a lot of those prospects before that price gets baked in, because there's so many guys that I'm on that I'm really excited about to talk to you guys about. And I want to confirm with you guys, and that's what we'll do on these episodes. This is a prospect that I think nobody knows about yet. Is the price reflecting that? And what's the best way for me to invest in that guy? I did that with Brennan before this year. I did it with Moreno, and it worked out really well. And I got some names that we're going to be talking about in the future that'll be really fun. So who are you collecting, Kendall? And I know you had a pretty cool Maximo Acosta pull that you were excited about.
Yeah, I really wanted to ask you about it because I got it mailed in today. Ooh. So here it is. The redemption here. We've got Maximo Acosta Prime Chrome Signature, which there's not even, I haven't even seen what he doesn't have one out yet, but I know that Blaze Jordan has had his turned in, and they are at the same level in terms of their Bowman firsts this year. They were at the same price level, which is strange for me because Maximo doesn't have the name recognition as Blaze. I'm not sure why they were evaluated at the same level, but so I pulled this card, and Maximo he's in my PC, probably the largest, probably top 5 in my PC, which is just because I like the Rangers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't know whether I should sell it or not, because this is definitely the coolest Maximo card I have. But it's like, do I sell it and cover, half the investment of the rest?
If you want to keep that one, I'd sell some of the others, man. I mean, like Acosta's got plenty of potential. And as you said, I mean, people are aware of it. The price reflects it, and he doesn't have that name recognition, but he was a high-end international free agent. He's a shortstop. He's got tools across the board, but I mean, how many of these guys have we seen not pan out?
And Texas is just not good at developing.
Yeah, they're not the best at developing talent. So all those things considered, it's a little risky. I wouldn't be going all in on a Maximo Acosta of all people, but I know you're big on him, and that's a fun guy for you. So I would.
Well, I'm really big on him because of him being a Ranger.
Exactly.
Like I'm big on him because I want him to be big, I think, if that makes sense.
So for tomorrow or next week's episode, a couple of things I'm really excited to talk about: buying the prospect dip, buying the big league dip, because those are two things. I am always looking at prospects who struggled. And one that comes to my mind is JJ Bleday. And I'm going to tease this for the next episode. He made some swing changes that, you talk about a lot of people in the hobby, they're not doing this for a living. So it's understandable that they don't have time to sit on a computer like me with no life and watching the difference of JJ Bleday's swing. They see crappy numbers, and that's it. I see a swing change that I'm sold on. That's where there's an opportunity to enter in here. And that's something I want to talk about as to whether the dip if there was a justifiable dip for his performance or lack thereof. And so we're going to talk about that on the big league level and on the minor league level. And we're going to start giving out some more investments and guys that we're looking at. So this was a good first episode, guys. I'm really excited. We're going to keep rolling once a week. People can expect it here at Just Baseball Media on YouTube. Tell the nice audience here where they can keep up with you. Kendall first, and then T. We'll have some nice graphics for the next episode. We might even have it for this episode, and people will be like, what are you talking about? I can see it right there, where people can see your handles, and we'll have, the nice little setup in the background.
Ben's a wizard at what he does.
Yeah. But just in case, where can people keep up with you?
Yeah, I'm at Lefty McKee on all social medias. LEFTYMCKEE. But more importantly, I'd rather push you to Wildcards Trading, which is our break page on Facebook. And then we also have an Instagram and Twitter profile that funnel all the things back to that break page.
You guys do some awesome giveaways.
Yeah, we did. We just gave away a hobby box of 2021 Bowman today, which was
you didn't rig it for me.
No, we did not.
So it's legit. I'm waiting until the day I win it. People are gonna be like, "It's rigged." I'm like, "No, I've just done it so many times. I finally won one." But what about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Edward T. Wright 3, or again, our Twitter handle is wildcards_LLC. We couldn't have the same Twitter handle that we have with Instagram because it's too long. So anyway, wildcards_LLC. Wildcards Box Breaks, as Kendall said, is our Facebook group. Join our group, man. We'd love to have you. Our breaks are not expensive. We're in there to have fun and to educate the consumer.
And you get a graded card with every break.
Yep. Give away a graded card with every break. So we try to keep it light, keep it fun, keep it inexpensive, and also bring a little bit of educational component to it. So. And
I hop on from time to time and provide some prospect analysis as well. And they're always a lot of fun. So we'll be talking with you next week. Any questions on prospects, investing, card related, let us know in the comments below. And we'll obviously reserve some time to answer some questions there as well. That'll do it for this edition of Cardboard Consultants. And we'll be back next week.